Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Mindfulness Monday session. We're so happy to have been able to continue this series through the spring. These sessions are a collaboration between the Office of Alumni Engagement and the University Center for Student Wellbeing. As we find ourselves living through this challenging time, meditation and mindfulness practices can be powerful ways to help us better manage current stresses and uncertainties. During this session, mindfulness meditations will be taught and practiced together in hopes of providing us with a greater sense of peace and vitality. As we begin 2021, this session will focus on resolutions for the new year. I'm Audrey Tierney, the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement, and I am so pleased to be joined today by my colleagues and alumni, Dr. T.J. Smith and Amber Lazier of the Center for Student Wellbeing. They are more than happy to put together this program to help us all navigate through these challenging times with the present pandemic. Before I introduce them, I have just a few notes in regards to the technical end of the session. Throughout the program, your microphones will be muted, but you're welcome to submit questions through the chat feature found on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. TJ and Amber will answer questions at the end of the program as time permits. Now, a few words about my colleagues from the Center for Student Wellbeing in case this is your first time joining us. Dr. T.J. Smith is a licensed clinical psychologist and has been engaged with meditation for over a decade, most recently leading meditation groups for Duquesne University students. T.J. is currently the training director for Duquesne's counseling services. Amber Lazier has a background in exercise physiology and has taught yoga for 13 years and meditation for 11. Amber currently is Assistant Director for Recreation Services and has a profound appreciation for the ecumenical approach to the mission of the university. And now I will turn our session over to Amber and TJ.
Thank you, Audrey, for that introduction. And I'd also like to just toss it out there that with Zoom, they are constantly making new updates and things like that. So you may notice at the bottom of your screen that there's also a Q&A feature. So that is also there, should you need to use it. And we are going to be discussing the new year and the idea of the beginner's mind. So if you've taken a yoga class, you might have come across this phrase, the beginner's mind, and it really derives from the idea of Zen Buddhism, and it's also known as Shoshin. And it's having an attitude of openness and eagerness, lack of preconceived notions, anytime that you approach a subject. And it can be applied to all aspects of life. It doesn't have to just apply to the yoga class that you're in. It can be applied to stepping into a room. It could be applied to when you travel. And the best way that I like to introduce the subject of beginner's mind is to invite you to remember a time that you, maybe in your travels or maybe just in your own hometown, where you found yourself in a place or a situation that you've never been in before. And if you remember that time, you might have noticed your attitude towards the space is a little bit different than how we approach routine situations. So me walking to my car to drive to work and the route to my job is pretty routine. I don't know what's going on outside. You know, there could be like a bear in my yard and I probably wouldn't have even noticed it because I'm just stuck in that routine. But I remember the first time I went to the desert and, you know, it was so different than anything I had ever seen because I'm here in Western Pennsylvania. Everything is so green and humid and everything like that. So the first time I'd seen the desert, you know, it's completely new. And you look around the landscape and you're taking in everything, or maybe just an airport that you've never been in before. You know, when you step off the airplane, you're in a brand new airport. You don't know how things work, especially if it's not in English. And so you have to take in all of these details that if this was your routine trip, you may just miss it, you know. And so you're listening to the announcements on the speaker. You're looking at all the signs and maybe the difference in design and the difference in layout. And you're taking all of those things in and noticing them, because from an evolutionary perspective, it is a survival mechanism. Because if we're in a space where we don't recognize it, we need to look at everything because we might need that information sometime in the future. So our minds are primed when we're in that space of first time mentality to just take in as much as we possibly can. But if you take this idea of beginner's mind and apply that to the things that we might view as a routine, we might notice things within our everyday that we hadn't noticed before. So for the beginning of the year, it is a very nice exercise to practice this mentality of beginner's mind.
Love that example too, because I'm thinking about when we went up to Ireland years and years back, first time in Ireland, but driving up the coast there, and there are these wonderful cliffs, and they were, just awestruck. So this is an experience that I was finding beautiful. I'm sure someone coming to Pennsylvania, even, Pittsburgh, could find that same beauty if they're coming from a different place, a different climate, a different, sort of landscape. But then, driving through Pittsburgh, it's Pittsburgh, driving across the bridge. Hey, this is something I do to get to work every day. But really, especially coming out of the Fort Pitt Bridge there, where you get that wonderful view of the city. I mean, that's magnificent there, but we forget about it because we can become so habituated.
You're absolutely right. I'll just share a quick memory of, I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, about 2.5 hours in the mountains, near Seven Springs Ski Resort. And so going to the city was like a big deal for us because it was an all-day affair. We had to, it's a 2.5 hour drive there. And then you spend your time there, and you have to do everything because you're not going back tomorrow. And then you have the long drive home and everything like that. And I just remember we would take the Parkway from the east in, and when you're driving down the Parkway, after you come through the Squirrel Hill tunnels, you kind of like round a corner, and like there's the south side, there's downtown, and the river, and especially at night, it's just beautiful. And I would always look forward to that moment, like rounding that bend and just seeing the city. And then, fast forward 10, 15 years, and I'm working in the city and living in the East and making that commute every day. And somehow that like magical experience that I lived for became like, oh, this is my morning.
There it is.
Like,
again.
Like, I want this to be done. And I'm like listening to podcasts to try to like pass the time. And you just lose, that wonder that is the beginner's mind, or that whole like first time experience. So
that's it.
Yeah, isn't it fun?
And that wonder, that's, it's kind of, I think, part of mindfulness, part of meditation is to sort of bring back some of that wonder, some of that curiosity. And what a better time of year to do it than, with the new year, because I think so much, not beginner's mind, I guess, expert's mind or liver's mind is sort of, one where you have a lot of expectation, a lot of judgments. And I think there's so many expectations coming into a new year, especially coming off of last year, that might cloud our vision and make things a little bit more tricky, a little bit more challenging. So I think this is a nice place to begin with that wonder as we start the new year.
Thank you. Yes, I think so. We're going to start with a unique meditation that's really based in the idea of beginner's mind. So in the past, we've done our first meditation is more like something to get you primed to listen, or relax the muscles or different things like that. But today we're going to actually be focusing on the beginner's mind and the difference between where we are and where we could be. So let's find ourselves in a comfortable position. And I'd like you to close your eyes. Before we do anything regarding relaxing the muscles or focusing on the breath or the environment that we're in, I want you to look inwardly and just check out your mental space right now. What apprehensions do you have? What preconceived notions exist in your mind? What stressors might be facing you? What goals do you have? Where are you right now? Just take a few moments to look at where you are right here, right now. Your aspirations, goals, and stressors, and just kind of categorize them, take note of them. And now that you've taken a look at your aspirations, goals, stressors, roadblocks, let's just take a moment to look at the present moment. How does your body feel right now? Do you find yourself relaxed? And any specific muscle groups? Maybe your shoulders are relaxed, maybe your feet are relaxed. Do you find yourself comfortable? Perhaps there's an area of discomfort. Maybe your low back is tight, tightening your jaw. And from here, just take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, relax any space that you might feel some muscular tension. So it's all physical. Focus on the breath. As you inhale, count 1. As you exhale, count 2. As you inhale again, count 3. As you exhale again, count 4. And continue counting as you inhale and exhale until you reach 10, and simply begin again. Just counting the breaths in groups of 10. And now we'll return our mental attention on our environment, on our body. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, relax. Get a little bit heavier in your chair. And now I'm inviting you to open your eyes and look around the space that you're in right now, and just take it in, as if with a beginner's mind. As if you've never seen it before. This might be as if it's the first time that you've entered this space. And look at the details. Something you've missed, good or bad. Don't even label it. Just take it in. Thank it for coming to your attention. Let it go. Continue to look. We're meditating on our surroundings. Just looking at everything in your space. Appreciating its existence. The engineering that might have brought it to be. The person that brought it into your space. And now we'll bring our mind back to the current presentation, hopefully with a renewed sense of appreciation for the things around us that we might miss when we're not necessarily paying attention to them.
Yeah, the vividness of my computer screen jumped out at me too. Like, this is an older computer screen, Dell, nothing new, but just that orange and blue hue that I see there with that great graphic that you put just really jumped out at me. I'm like, oh, that's nice. This is an okay computer screen. I usually take it for granted as just, some sort of tool to get the work done. But it was really nice. That artwork really, seemed to call out to me, which I wasn't noticing before.
Thank you for sharing that. I know for me, it's usually furniture that I notice. Oh, there's so much science that goes into creating comfortable and good furniture. And we don't really think about it, but somebody dedicated their career to finding the right chair or the right angles for the back of a chair so that our backs aren't hurting. You know, a lot of us are working from home, or if we're not working at home, we might be sitting at a desk oftentimes. We don't really take the time to appreciate our chairs. The fact that we don't have debilitating back pain sitting in them all day. So, you know, you can always find something to appreciate. And I know, like, when I'm at my house, I fall into the pit of, oh, if I look around, I might notice, like, oh, I should really put that cup away, or, oh, I don't think I've dusted on top of that shelf in a really long time. You know, but really, when it comes to the beginner's mind, that you take it all in. It's not good, it's not bad. You're just taking it in, appreciating its existence. At least I have a shelf to collect dust, or, you know, those.
Yeah, that is it too. Yeah, and I appreciate that 1-2 step, the, you know, inhabiting beginner's mind, and then sort of noting and not sort of playing into judgments. Because that's the second thing I that happened for me. I looked over, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of papers on my desk. So in that way, because I think, like you're talking about, when you enter a new space, let's say if you're entering a new city, it can become overwhelming in beginner's mind, a whole bunch of different stimuli. So I think that sort of initial, whoa, I have this to clean, I didn't have this to dust, can be part of that overwhelm. So it's sort of letting yourself let that be, noting it, but then not stepping into a major judgment mode of being.
Yeah, because I mean, when we go to new places, it's not always good that we, you know, like, we're taking in a brand new surrounding. Like, the desert is very hot.
Yes.
You know, so it's always beautiful and amazing, but, you know, still our mind is taking it all in. And when we're in a space for the first time, we're not necessarily like immediately judging it. We're just taking it in and assessing
That's it.
in a very objective way. So this slide is really just kind of spelling out the idea of beginner's mind. And this is a quote from Suzuki. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. In the beginner's mind, there is no thought, I have attained something. All self-centered thoughts limit our vast mind. When we have no thoughts of achievement, no thought of self, we are true beginners. We can really learn something.
Wonderful. And in this way, too, I think beginner's mind, as we go over it, can serve as a nice context for yourself at work. So if you end up not doing something, or you're not studying, or you're not sort of preparing for a project, you could always just say, hey, I have the beginner's mind right now. I'm just kidding. That's why a part of me, Amber and I, were tempted just not to prepare for today. So in that way, it would be sort of living the beginner's mind, just have a blank slate, and to let the, you know, the spirit and the project unfold. But then we thought, now we better prepare.
We better prep. There's a time for beginner's mind, and there's a time for
yes.
what you need to do.
Yeah, and that's
We still have to pay our bills and remember our zip code.
And that's a good point there too, because there's a time for beginner's mind, and then there's a time for expert's mind too. So, you know, whatever our area is that we're an expert in, that we need that experience, and from that experience we can let go, but then we can go back to that expert mind. You know, I'm thinking my job as a therapist, I saw a lot of times step into beginner's mind, you know, sort of when meeting somebody, and not sort of see them as, you know, having a lot of preconceptions, but then sometimes the expert mind needs to be there. If the person's in a crisis or something, I want to know what resources are there. So yeah, there's a time for that, a time for expert's mind, a time for beginner's mind.
Well, I mean, I never really thought about it in context to your job, because I'm living in my job, but yeah, you're meeting people on a regular basis, brand new people, and although your science, like psychological sciences, are saying, like, you know, people fit into certain categories, but yeah, you still have to meet every person as if you don't know. So even if they're displaying certain tendencies, you can't necessarily say, like, you fit right here and then just keep on moving. You have to, like, really take that beginner's mind approach, and I think that's how we listen well to people as well.
Totally. Yeah, it's like it's almost like the crutches that you need and hopefully to get rid of. You need that expert's mind to sort of learn and to sort of get into, my profession, any profession, but that can be really become a hindrance if you're just seeing people through labels or sort of certain perceptions, a lot of preconceptions. So you need to, use it to lose it, and then you can use it again if you need to. Yeah, so Amber already started talking about this, so I'll extend it a bit as well. She mentioned about some of the evolutionary bases for some of the tendencies we have, and it's going to talk about this in the sense of different blocks we could have to beginner's mind. So things that might be interfering with us, choosing to approach life with a beginner's mind. I titled this biological blocks. What I'm meaning more about that is this is just sort of more of nature. It's part of being human. It's what's given. One thing Amber was talking about was, a lot of times, in a sense, we are just ready for the new. Not even in a personal sense that we like stuff that's new, but we're really set up to sort of scan the environment for new things, novel experiences, because those we don't already have a preconception for. So we don't really know how that's going to fit in. So new in a way can equal danger in that way. So the opposite is true too. When we know things, when we really are used to them, there's a lessened emotional response, and this could be called habituation. When we're used to the same environment, the same people, the same routine, that we become habituated to it. Something that at one point was novel is no longer novel. It's every day. So that contrast between the everyday, which we become habituated to, and the novel that which we're scanning for and wanting to prepare for, lends it to a situation where we might be really become dull and really used to and accustomed to things that do contain some beauty, do contain some majesty. So that's something where, I know myself, I think a big reason I get into meditation is just that. It's because I think that, as human, there's a certain amount of taken for grantedness. I'll speak to it on a Monday. Gosh, there's a lot of preconceptions on a Monday. Oh, it's a Monday, it's cloudy in Pittsburgh. Oh, so I'm bringing those preconceptions, but a lot of those times, those preconceptions are ways to blocking us to something that might just happen that is different. And that's the coolest thing too, although it's good from an evolutionary standpoint to really scan for that which is new. However, in another way too, when we're becoming too accustomed to that which is every day, we're going to lose that magic. And really, there is no one day that's the same. Every day is honestly its own day. It may feel the same, it may follow the same patterns, but that habituation is just one way that expert mind can kind of cloud over and block us from really the possibility of something new happening today. Second thing I wanted to mention too would be the negativity bias. And that goes hand in hand with the scanning the environment for something that's novel. Really just as humans, we're built to pay attention to things that are a little bit negative, things that, and I'm using labels and judgments here, but things that might have a little bit more negative impact on our survival and our well-being, things that might be of danger. So in that way, we are scanning for negativity. So we have a bias towards taking in the negative. And then we pay less attention to things that are neutral and positive because they're not going to provide us as much information to help us to survive. And thinking about this in terms of social distancing and even, spending less time out there, maybe more times in the house working, or even not as much time socializing out and about. Gosh, it kind of reinforces this too, because at least when we're out sort of doing things as we were doing them, going to this place and that place, we were exposed to a lot more differences, a lot more sort of novel experiences. Whereas here, our world has kind of just shrunk in a way where we're not exposed to as much stuff. So I think that whole habituation can kind of really come over itself where we're really feeling really blocked to some side of the excitement that life might have to offer. So I think, I think the beginner's mind matters even more in this time and period of social distancing. So taking this into account, if these are biological blocks, at the end here, I just say, forgive yourself. This is just a part of being human. You, me, we all become habituated to things we're used to. You and me, we all sort of tend toward the negative. So if that's happening and you're not inhabiting this beginner's mind, that's okay. That's just what we do.
I'm glad you add that last part of forgive yourself, because that's how we keep from getting hit by cars on the street and noticing things that are wrong and having those instincts of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go into that building because I smell natural gas everywhere around it. All these things. So it keeps us safe in one sense, but I think that's really where mindfulness comes to play too, because if we find ourselves like focusing on like those negative differences all the time and we become fixated on it, then like that's where mindfulness can step in and say like, is this really negative, or is this just how I'm perceiving this situation because of internal biases or different things of that nature? I appreciate
Yes, that's right. And that's an amazing transition to this sort of the psychological blocks too, which we're going to call nurture, which means there's things that are gained through experience, and it's just that. We have these sort of biological leanings toward, finding the negative, ignoring the positive. However, that makes sense when you're a tiger out in the wild, and maybe you're a gazelle out in the wild, and you sort of you're looking for the tiger. But a lot of times with the human mind, a bit more complex, we can get stuck, and that's where the psychological blocks come in. We can get stuck on the negative. So it's one thing to be prepared to see that tiger and run if you see the tiger. It's another thing to be sort of anticipating something negative happening that hasn't happened yet, and there's a good possibility it won't happen. So that's where really the psychological blocks come in, which can be far more detrimental too. So these are called cognitive distortions. This comes from a cognitive behavioral therapy tradition, and cognitive distortions are just ways of thinking, and you could think about them as limited patterns of thinking. They kind of block us in the extent to really being open to life, and sometimes they open us more to the negativity of life, so they can contribute us maybe feeling stressed, anxious, sad, in more extreme extents too. So I like to think of these as the glasses we could wear that could sort of taint the world that we're seeing. And then the beginner's mind could be a way to take off those glasses to see the world more clearly. So I'll go over a few of them. They're just fun. And the one way of going over them too is so that we can become familiar with them, so that when you're going out there into the world, if any of these different cognitive distortions arrive, you could have a name for them. You could put a label on them. That label could be neutral. It doesn't have to be a negative judgment. It just could be like, I'm filtering again. There it is. And even just by noting that in a meditation or in your everyday life, that noting it and letting that go can help you to come back to beginner's mind, to more of an open state of being. So looking at these, the first one I have there is filtering. And that's when you focus on the negative and ignore the positive. So you can see that's rooted more in biological mechanisms there. But we can really take that up in a social way, in a psychological way, where we really just key in on something negative that happens in our life or something that somebody says, and then we totally ignore all the positive stuff that's going around. I'm thinking about at work, this could happen. Let's just say someone, you give a presentation, or there's a project you're working on, and a person maybe says, oh, there's one room for improvement here, or here's an area of growth. But I really love your project. This is a great project. It really has a lot of value. If that happens, some of us can tend to just sort of fixate on that. Oh my gosh, she said there's a room for improvement. She said I need to change this here. I got to do a lot of work to change this. This project isn't of value. I got to do this. We can become fixated and attached to that one negative comment, and then really look over the fact that in general, the person said it was a good project, or in general, the person liked it. So in that way, we're filtering the information out, and that's it. Beginner's mind, it's sort of an openness to information, whereas these cognitive distortions, it's a filtering, really focusing on the negative and not being open to some of the positive. Another one is polarized thinking, seeing things in either or terms, black or white, good or bad. And it's kind of strict and dichotomous. There's no shades of gray. A lot of life is shades of gray, but it's really just seeing things as either or. And a lot of the cognitive distortions are things that I'm taking up as things that could contribute to you, feeling anxious or sad or, bad about yourself or another person. So in that way, when you're using polarized thinking, if you're thinking, say you're a parent like myself, something happens and you're like, oh, I'm the worst parent ever. I'm horrible. So you can categorize yourself as a good parent, a bad parent. And maybe you see someone else who's, having an easier time of it. It looks like, oh, that person's the best. They're a good parent. I'm a horrible parent. So it can be a way of, categorizing yourself as either or. Either I'm good or bad. And if I do something like this, I'm bad. But again, that's a way of filtering all the information. There's all that information in beginner's mind that you're kind of open to in a way that's objective and non-judgmentally. And here you're polarizing it. It's either good or bad. You're good or bad. I'm good or bad. And it's a really way of limiting, seeing people in their full, and seeing yourself in your full grandiosity there. Another cognitive distortion is overgeneralization. So that would be generalizing a conclusion based off a single incident. Again, overgeneralization is not just generalizing. We all generalize. That's how we sort of make inferences and hypotheses, but this is overgeneralizing. There's a single incident that then you make a huge conclusion from, and use that conclusion doesn't really match up. This is not as much, I think, with Duquesne grads here. If I'm thinking about undergraduates in this day and age, let's say if a friend turns down your invite to hang out or something like that, you might feel forever alone. Oh my gosh, this person didn't want to hang out with me tonight. They're never going to want to hang out with me. I'm never going to have a person to spend time with. I'm going to be alone forever. And even just fall in that line of thinking with these cognitive distortions, you can see how that can impact one's mood. Oh my gosh, if just from this one incident, I'm going to be ever alone, that person will be feeling stressed, sad, anxious. If a person thinks they're a bad parent with polarized thinking, oh, I'm going to be feeling down. So a lot of these cognitive distortions can really negatively impact our mood. Other one we have here is mind reading. That is assuming that you know what people feel about you without evidence. So it's really that almost a thought of that you know exactly what a person's thinking, you know exactly what a person's feeling, and there is no evidence to prove that. There's no behavior, no statements that are going into that. That happens a lot with, I think, with everybody. It definitely happens with our students too. If you don't get a text back, oh my God, I didn't get a text back. Is that person mad at me? Thing is, person may be mad at you. So sometimes that does happen, but it is just that implicit leading with and assuming that the worst without much evidence, and without giving that person really the chance to speak for themselves. So again, in that state, if you assume without one text, the person doesn't text back in 10 minutes that they're mad at you, then that could really lead to some distress. If they don't text back for a couple of days, yeah, but within that 10 minutes, you might be assuming you know more than you know. And the three other ones would be magnifying. That's really exaggerating the problem. So if we look at our beginner's mind almost as our eyes through which we perceive the world, magnifying is just that, taking that magnifying glass, and rather than seeing the world in this openness with your eyes, really focusing on one thing and exaggerating that problem. So it could be something very tiny that you really focus on and you make that the whole of it. So this would be easy if you make a mistake in any walk of your life, and that's what you focus on. I made a mistake. I can't believe I made this mistake. I'm the worst person ever. This is a horrible day, or one thing bad happens. I ended up having an order canceled from Walmart today, that had been on hold for a couple months actually, and I could use that. I'm ready. That's right there. That avalanche is ready to tip. Oh, my internet's not working today. My order got canceled. It's a Monday. It's, and then it could just, and then before you know it, I'm on the bed crying. No, so it's stuff like that that really can, and in this respect with these cognitive distortions, it's not only blocking you from beginner's mind, it's really causing a great deal of suffering too. Personalization, that just as it's on you. It's that tendency that we all have to take things personally, that if there is something going on negatively out there in the world, rather than thinking, hey, this negativity might have to do with the other person or something going out there in their quadrant, that it automatically assume it has to do with you. This could be if you're walking by on the street and when we used to sort of be in more contact with people and I'm on campus and waved to someone, hey, I waved to Amber, I said, hey, and she doesn't see me. A personalization could be, oh my God, is she mad at me? She didn't wave back. What's going on? Taking that personal, assuming it's something to do with you, as opposed to Amber is going about her day. She said it is me. I knew it. So it could be something else. It may very well be me, but in that way you'll take it personal automatically. And that could really contribute to a lot of stress and distress. And the final one is one of my favorites. It's the shoulds. With beginner's mind, there's not as many shoulds. There's just more is. There's an is quality to it. It is saying it is what it is. It is an abundance. Whereas with cognitive distortions, there's a lot of shoulds. There's these rules about how you should act. There's rules about how other people should act, and these rules are rather strict and stringent and restricting too. I mean, there's definitely rules of behavior and conduct, but these are rules about everything. I should, and a lot of times they're extreme rules, like I should be the perfect, spouse. I should be the perfect friend, parent. I should be kinder. I should be smarter. I should be in better shape. So you just pick your poison, whatever you want to focus on when something happens. You end up getting frustrated at your kids. Oh, I should be a better parent. It's the New Year's. I eat some chocolate. Oh, I should be in better shape. I set that New Year's resolution to get in better shape. So that can really limit you from engaging the world with these new eyes.
This is a really comprehensive list, but it's fantastic. And I have two thoughts on it before we move on to the next slide. The first one is the social media algorithm. Like, I love social media. I'm on all the platforms. I really like them. But one thing that I have to realize is that a lot of aspects of social media removes the beginner's mind aspect from all of it, because things are so filtered. So if I'm on TikTok and I really like, comedy, like this one comedian who does stand-up, and I have little clips of his stand-up, and I really like kitchen hacks, and I keep liking those and looking at those, then the more things that show up on my For You page are kitchen hacks and comedians. And so I missed out on so many other things. And then I get into that, mindset of like taking in all of those things and forgetting that other things exist. And, you become, desensitized to anything else that goes on, and or at least. And so, bringing the beginner's mind into the idea of social media is just realizing that, these things are a little bit generalized. We're seeing things that are filtered to our taste. And so before we make judgments upon those things, understanding that, the algorithm is set to kind of keep us in that mode of just scrolling. So the things that we like are just going to show up over and over again. But then also, I'm glad you ended with the idea of the word should, because in Buddhist philosophy, there's this idea that all suffering comes from the word should, because we are looking at the world as it is, but placing the word should on it and saying, well, it should be this way. And then we suffer because of that, or we're upset because of that, rather than just accepting it for what it is and then moving forward from that point. So, should is a swear word for the most part. I mean, there are certainly areas where it is necessary, but should is one of those words that, anytime that word comes out of our mouth, we need to like step back and think, okay, what is, so.
That's the biggest. The Steelers should have beat the Browns, but they didn't.
Oh, I just heard about that. So
yeah.
The Browns won, huh?
Yeah, and I won't get into that, but it was just,
okay.
I'm thinking of that as an example, sports, but any walk of life, as soon as you get that should, that can just sort of cause more and more misery.
Yeah. So accepting things how they are, and accepting what is doesn't necessarily mean doing nothing about it. We see things going on in the world that shouldn't be accepted, but they did happen. So, what do we do about it? How do we move forward from that? We accept what is and then move forward, rather than holding ourselves in that holding pattern. Well, it should be like this and it should be like this. But our reality says something differently completely. So if we want to incorporate this idea of a beginner's attitude into our everyday life, especially now in January, as we're looking at a new year, we want to think about where we can incorporate that mindset. One of those aspects is in our relationships. So, I've been on lockdown or working from home a whole lot since March 2020. And it's just me and my husband in our house. And we've been married for we celebrated our second anniversary in lockdown. And when we're both working from home and you develop this routine, you just kind of forget the other person's in the house, or you don't appreciate those things because you see them all the time. And it's like, oh, I'm going to see this person again, for the next couple of hours. So, so it's a good reminder to appreciate the people in our lives, appreciate the people in our households and the nuances in their personalities. And so if we want to incorporate the beginner's attitude or beginner's mind, our first place that we can look are the people surrounding us, because they're new beings every day. It's a new day for them, it's a new day for us. And so just asking them what their goal is for the day, or just being present when they're telling you about what went on for them or how they feel about something, and actively listening, taking in what they're saying without thinking about what we're saying next, or taking their presence for granted. And social distancing at home is, at home and in the outside world, is keeping us from appreciating certain relationships, because we're not really generating new chats with strangers, because we have this mindset of stay in your bubble, do what you need to do in the store and get back out. There aren't some of those impromptu conversations that might pop up like they used to be. So when we are practicing our social distancing and mindfulness when we are in public and everything like that, we can still appreciate those around us, and we can still appreciate what is happening in the space where we reside, and we can still talk to people, as long as we're staying apart, wearing masks and everything. It's relatively low risk, as long as you're doing those things. So still taking those moments to appreciate, again, your surroundings and the people around you. And then we also want to practice self-care. So self-care is a buzzword, and I feel like, at least in my scene working in wellness, that word's been thrown around so often in the past, 14 months, that it feels like it's losing its meaning. But let's take the beginner's attitude towards, what does self-care mean to you? Where, at the very beginning when we did our meditation, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? What are your roadblocks? What are your stressors? And then what are some things that you can do to negate some of the negative effects? And what are you able to do to enhance some of the positive things that are going on? And that's what true self-care is. Self-care is not buying a skincare package from Ipsy that will make you glow, unless your biggest problem right now is your skin. It's not about buying a certain product that has good marketing and aesthetic packaging. It's really about assessing what you need right now and incorporating more of that, and what's going well for you right now, and working to enhance those things. So self-care practices could span anything from maybe taking some online lessons in a new language, to giving yourself a free night where you don't have any chores or responsibilities, or maybe even, going and getting a hotel room for the evening so that you're by yourself. It could really be any of those things. But when we incorporate beginner's attitude into the idea of self-care, it's about a personal assessment, and it's going to look very different for very different people. So my favorite with beginner's attitude is learning a subject. So often we associate learning a new skill, learning something new, with children, right? Who takes swimming lessons? Kids do. But as an adult, I'm a terrible swimmer. I feel like I'm going to die every time I'm in the water. I could use a swim lesson as an adult, but there's this stigma approach to the adult beginner, and there's a lot of science out there that says, the prime age to learn something new is between 5 and 7, or 5 and 12, or if you're learning a new language, you need to start before 18. What that is saying is that it's a prime age. You might be more sensitive to learning new things between those ages, but it's not critical. You can learn new things at any age. So as adults, if there's a subject that you wish to learn, it doesn't mean that you can't learn it. It doesn't mean that it's inaccessible to you. And sometimes stepping out of that comfort zone of your routine and the things that you know, and stepping into a space where you know nothing and you're just learning the subject, can be a really freeing experience and allow you, the ability to see things anew because you're learning something for the new time, for the first time. And that actually helps cultivate a sense of curiosity and creativity, not just in the area that you're studying, but in other areas in your life as well. So if you start learning a new language, you might approach problems that show up in your job a little bit differently because you're thinking about it from perhaps a different perspective than before you started learning that new language. It's how our brain is wired. And finally, I just have to throw yoga in here because yoga is the first space where I learned about beginner's attitude. And if you've taken yoga classes, a lot of times the instructor might begin the class with an idea of, let's approach all of these things with the beginner's mind. And what I love about the beginner's mind in yoga is that when we do a pose, there's not a perfect way to do it. I know that yoga magazines make things look really easy and perfect, and then when I get on the mat, I can't even touch my toes without bending my knees, and so it can be frustrating. But when you approach these things with a beginner's mind and you realize that a forward fold is really just about bending the spine to your own personal limitations, then any forward fold is a correct forward fold as long as you're in alignment. And so when we approach it in that way, we're not judging ourselves for not looking like the instructor. Rather, we're able to feel the nuances in that pose, feel the stretch, feel how our breath changes, and really just take a look at it internally rather than being in a space of comparison.
All right, then. We'll engage in a meditation. This is a mindfulness meditation focusing on breathing, and it can also be used to encourage us inhabiting a space of beginner's mind, even labeling thoughts and sensation expectations that may be getting in the way of beginner's mind. So let's begin. Just want you to start by settling into a comfortable position. Allowing your eyes to close, you're keeping them open with a softened gaze. Begin by taking several long, slow, deep breaths, breathing in fully and exhaling fully. Breathe in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth. Allow your breath to find its own natural rhythm. Bring your full attention to noticing each in-breath as it enters your nostrils, travels down to your lungs, causes your belly to expand. And notice each out-breath. As your belly contracts, air moves up through the lungs and back through the nostrils or mouth. Invite your full attention to the flow of your breath. Notice how the inhale is different from the exhale. You may experience the air as cool as it enters your nose and warm as you exhale. As you turn more deeply inward, begin to let go of noises around you. If you are distracted by sounds in the room, simply notice them and then bring your intention back to your breath. Simply breathe as you breathe, not striving to change anything about your breath. Don't try to control your breath in any way. Observe your experience in this moment without judgment, paying attention to the inhale and the exhale. If your mind wanders to thoughts, plans, or problems, simply notice your mind wandering. Watch the thought as it enters your awareness as neutrally as possible. Then practice letting go of the thought as if it were a leaf floating down a stream. In your mind, Place each thought that arises on the leaf and watch it float out of sight down the stream. Then bring your attention back to your breath. Your breath is an anchor you can return to over and over again when you become distracted by thoughts. Notice when your mind has wandered. Observe the types of thoughts that hook or distract you. Are these thoughts limiting, inhabiting a space of beginner's mind? Are these cognitive distortions limiting the way you see the world, others, and yourself? Noticing is the richest part of learning. With this knowledge, you can strengthen your ability to detach from thoughts. Label these thoughts. Mindfully focus your awareness back on the qualities of your breath. Practicing coming home to your breath with full awareness. Watching the gentle rise of your stomach on the in-breath and the relaxing letting go on the out-breath. Allow yourself to be completely with your breath as it flows in and out. You might become distracted by pain or discomfort in the body, or twitching and itching sensations that draw your attention away from the breath. You may also notice feelings arising, perhaps of sadness or happiness, frustration or contentment. Acknowledge whatever comes up, including thoughts or stories about your experience. Simply notice where your mind went without judging it, pushing it away, clinging to it, wishing it were different, and simply refocus your mind and guide your attention back to your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Follow the air all the way in and all the way out. Mindfully be present moment by moment with your breath. If your mind wanders away from your breath, just notice it without judging it. Be it a thought, an emotion, a sensation that hooks your attention, and gently guide your awareness back to your breathing. As this practice comes to an end, slowly allow your attention to expand and notice your entire body, and then beyond your body into the room where you were in. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back fully alert and awake. This breath is always with you as a refocusing tool to help you bring you back to the present moment and bring you back to the state of beginner's mind. Set an intention for this hour throughout the day, throughout this week, throughout this year, really to practice this daily to help you cultivate and strengthen your attention and to inhabit a space of beginner's mind.
Thank you, TJ.
The final quote, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. And I think that speaks to that beginner's mind too. And Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Feels like decades ago.
It does, yes.
It's It's only 11 days into the new year that I'm like, somebody had texted me I hadn't spoken to since last year. And I said, oh, Happy New Year. And I was like, what? Why are you telling me that?
It does feel a while ago.
Ages ago. So does anybody have questions, comments, things they'd like to share?
I haven't seen anything, any additional questions coming through the chat.
If anyone heard the noise in the background, my wife is teaching. She's a third grade teacher, so there might have been that in the background as well.
Oh, looks like, oh, just a comment of thank you. And so thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Amber and TJ, for such a wonderful session. I know these sessions have really helped me through this time, and I hope they have done the same for all of you. And thank you all again for attending today's Mindfulness Monday. We'll be continuing this series through the spring, so be sure to watch for a follow-up email that will include the link to register for our next session on February 15th. That will be on love and compassion. And that email will also include links for all of our upcoming virtual events. If you have any questions for TJ or Amber that you didn't ask today, or if there is anything specific that you'd like to cover in the future, their email addresses will also be included in the email as well. Oh, and one more. Oh, just comments coming in. I don't see any other questions. Any final words, Amber or TJ, before we sign off?
I'd like to say thank you. And if there is a subject matter or a specific question that you'd like to see more in depth of a response and you'd like to email us, we can be certain to include them into upcoming sessions and classes. So if there's something that you really have a deeper question on, please feel free to reach out and we can elaborate on it the next time that we meet.
Perfect.
If we know the answer.
Yes. And if not, we'll make it up.
Yeah.
We'll research it. Yes.
We'll do some research.
Great. All right, everyone. Thanks again. And I hope everyone has a great day and Happy New Year. And as always, go Dukes.
All right. Go Dukes. See ya.